Tonight the sky is doing something it has not done in nearly 250 years, and almost no one is watching for it. You are about to understand why. Tonight the buck moon rises. It is full, it is bright, and on the surface it looks like any other summer moon you have seen before. But this year it arrives inside something much larger. A slow-moving cosmic chapter, one that only a handful of generations in human history have ever witnessed. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why that matters and why so many people are quietly paying attention tonight. Picture a warm July night, the kind where the air barely moves. Somewhere far from the noise of the city, a field stretches out under a sky turning from orange to deep blue. Crickets start their slow rhythm. The heat of the day is fading, but the ground still holds its warmth, like it is breathing it back out into the dark. And then, at the edge of the horizon, something begins to glow. Not a sunrise, something older, something quieter. The moon. It rises heavy and golden at first, almost too large to be real, then slowly lifts itself into the sky, shrinking as it climbs, turning pale and silver the higher it goes. If you were standing there right now, you would feel the light touch your skin before you even realized you were looking directly at it. Full moonlight does that. It arrives before you notice it arriving. Somewhere, a dog barks once and goes quiet. A screen door creaks shut. Someone steps outside just to look up, without really knowing why. That pull you feel, standing beneath a full moon, is not new. Humans have felt it for as long as there have been humans to feel anything at all. And tonight, that same ancient pull is happening again, all over the world, at the exact same time. But this time, there is something else happening above that field. Something invisible to the eye. Something that will not happen again for generations. We will get there. But first, let's understand the moon you're actually looking at tonight. Long before satellites, calendars, or clocks that buzzed on your wrist, people still needed a way to track time. Not with numbers, but with nature. Full moons were their calendar. Each one was named for what was happening on the land at that exact point in the year, and those names were tools for survival long before they became folklore. July's moon earned its name from a very specific, very visible event. This is the time of year when male deer, known as bucks, begin growing a new set of antlers. Not repairing old ones, growing brand new ones from nothing in a matter of weeks. Think about that for a moment. An animal that lost everything just months earlier is now rebuilding itself, faster and stronger, right on schedule with the summer sky. Indigenous nations across North America noticed this pattern long before European settlers ever arrived, and they built their seasonal calendars around it. To them, this moon wasn't just a marker of time. It was a quiet lesson written into the land itself, that loss is often followed by regrowth, and that nature rebuilds itself without asking permission or waiting for comfort. There is something strangely comforting in that, if you sit with it. Every July, without fail, something out in the wild is proving that starting over is not a tragedy. It is a rhythm. But the moon's name is where the ordinary story ends, because this year, something extraordinary is happening above it. Something that has nothing to do with deer or seasons or folklore at all. Let's be clear about something right away, because this matters. The buck moon itself is not rare. It happens every single July like clockwork, the same as it has for thousands of years. If someone tells you tonight's moon is a once-in-a-lifetime event, they are only telling you half the story. What is rare is not the moon, it's the moments surrounding it. Astronomers have been tracking something far slower and far more distant than the moon's monthly cycle. Out at the edge of our solar system, the dwarf planet Pluto takes an extraordinarily long time to complete a single orbit around the Sun. We're talking about roughly 248 years for one full loop. Because of that painfully slow orbit, Pluto only shifts through each constellation of the zodiac once every few generations. Right now, for the first time in nearly 250 years, Pluto is passing through the sign of Aquarius. The last time it did this, the world looked almost unrecognizable. There were no telephones, no electric lights, no photographs. The idea of instant global communication would have sounded like fantasy. So when people describe this as a rare cosmic chapter, they are not exaggerating for effect. Astronomically speaking, we are living through a planetary alignment that most humans throughout history never got the chance to witness. Now, here is where honesty matters most. Astronomy can tell us with total confidence where Pluto is in the sky, how long its orbit takes, and how rarely this positioning occurs. That part is measurable, verified, and real. What astronomy cannot tell us is whether this positioning changes human behavior, emotions, or destiny. That interpretation belongs to astrology and personal belief systems, not scientific fact. We'll explore that symbolic side later, clearly labeled as exactly that, symbolic. Because you deserve to know the difference between what science has measured and what people have chosen to believe about it. But even removing all symbolism entirely, one fact remains untouched by opinion. Tonight's familiar buck moon is rising during a stretch of time so rare, most people alive today will never see its exact match again. So what did people do the last time the sky looked something like this? Long before satellites mapped the heavens, entire civilizations built their lives around what they could see with nothing but their eyes and their patience. In ancient Egypt, priests watched the sky not out of curiosity, but necessity. The flooding of the Nile, the planting of crops, the timing of festivals, all of it was tied to celestial patterns they tracked with obsessive precision. To them, the sky wasn't decoration, it was instruction. In ancient Greece, philosophers looked up and saw something different, a puzzle. They didn't just want to know when the moon would be full, they wanted to know why. Their questions about the movement of celestial bodies eventually planted the seeds of early astronomy as a discipline of its own. Rome took a more practical approach. Roman calendars, festivals, and even military campaigns were often timed around lunar cycles, because a bright moon meant safer travel and clearer visibility at night, something that mattered enormously before artificial light existed. And across North America, indigenous nations developed intricate seasonal calendars built entirely around the moon's changing names and appearances, using them to know exactly when to plant, when to harvest, when to hunt, and when to move their communities with the changing land. Early farming cultures across the world, from Mesopotamia to Asia to the Andes, all arrived independently at a similar realization. The sky was not separate from daily life. It was the operating system underneath it. What's remarkable is that none of these civilizations were in contact with one another, yet they all reached the same conclusion. The moon wasn't just something to admire, it was something to live by. Which raises an uncomfortable question for those of us living now, surrounded by clocks, apps, and artificial light. Have we lost that connection? Or have we simply buried it under convenience? There's a reason people whisper more on bright, moonlit nights, a reason conversations feel different, a reason sleep sometimes comes slower. For centuries, folklore blamed the full moon for strange behavior, sleeplessness, restlessness, even so-called madness. The word lunatic itself comes from luna, the Latin word for moon. But what does actual research say? Modern sleep science has found something interesting, though far less dramatic than folklore suggests. Some studies indicate that people may take slightly longer to fall asleep and experience marginally reduced sleep quality on nights surrounding a full moon, possibly due to increased natural brightness affecting our circadian rhythms, the internal body clock that responds to light and darkness. That's it. That's the honest, evidence-supported version. A subtle shift in sleep patterns, not werewolves, not chaos, not proof of supernatural influence. As for claims about increased crime rates, hospital admissions, or emergency room visits during full moons, the majority of large-scale scientific studies have found no consistent, reliable connection. Anecdotes are memorable. Statistics are not always as exciting, but they are far more trustworthy. So why do bright moonlit nights still feel different to us emotionally, even without dramatic scientific proof? Perhaps it's simpler than folklore suggests. A brighter night sky naturally draws our attention outward. It invites stillness. It creates a rare moment where artificial light doesn't dominate our environment, and our senses default back to something older and quieter. In other words, maybe the moon doesn't change us chemically. Maybe it simply gives us permission to notice ourselves. And that distinction is about to become very important. Before we go further, let's be completely transparent about something. Everything you're about to hear in this section is symbolic and spiritual interpretation, not scientific fact. These are ideas many people find personally meaningful, passed down through spiritual traditions and astrological practices, not measurable astronomical truths. Whether you connect with them or not is entirely your choice. With that said, here is what many people believe this particular moon represents. Because it arrives during Pluto's rare passage through Aquarius, many spiritual practitioners describe this period as one associated with letting go of outdated identities. Pluto, in astrological tradition, is often symbolically linked to transformation, endings, and rebirth. Aquarius, meanwhile, is often associated with independent thinking, collective change, and breaking away from old systems. Combined with a buck moon already symbolically tied to antler regrowth and renewal, some interpret this specific moment as a symbolic invitation toward personal reinvention. Not because the universe is forcing change upon you, according to this belief system, but because the environment feels aligned for reflection. Some describe this as a moment for emotional clarity, a pause where confusion quietly settles and answers that felt distant suddenly feel closer. Others describe it as an invitation toward release, letting go of relationships, mindsets, or old versions of yourself that no longer fit who you are becoming. And many describe it simply as a fresh beginning, not a dramatic transformation, but a quiet internal permission slip to start again. Again, none of this is scientifically provable. But symbolism has never needed scientific proof to hold meaning. Humans have always used story, symbol, and metaphor to process real emotions, long before we had data to explain them. So, if any of this resonates with you, that's not because the moon is controlling your life. It might simply be because you were already ready to hear it. If you strip away astrology, folklore, and even the rare planetary alignment entirely, something still remains. A full moon has always been a natural pause point, a moment built into nature's rhythm that invites reflection. So tonight, without pressure, without mysticism, just a quiet moment of honesty, ask yourself something simple. What have you outgrown? Not what should you outgrow, according to anyone else's timeline. What have you already outgrown, quietly, without fully admitting it to yourself yet? What deserves your energy right now? Not 5 years from now, not eventually. Right now, in this exact season of your life. What should you release? A habit, a grudge, a version of yourself you've been performing out of comfort rather than truth. And finally, what kind of future are you actually building based on your daily choices, not your daily intentions. These aren't mystical questions, they're deeply human ones. The kind that get buried under schedules and screens until a moment like this, quiet, bright, and strangely still, gives you permission to finally ask them. You don't need incense, rituals, or mystical tools to experience something meaningful tonight. You just need stillness. The first is simple observation. Step outside if you can. Look directly at the moon for longer than feels natural, maybe 30 seconds, maybe a full minute. Notice its color, its brightness, the way it seems to hold perfectly still while somehow feeling alive. The second is gratitude. Not performed, not forced, just honest. Think of one thing this year that changed you for the better, even if the change itself was difficult at the time. The third is journaling, even briefly. Not for anyone else to read, just a few honest lines about where you are right now compared to where you were a year ago under a very different moon. None of this guarantees transformation. There's no promise that writing a sentence tonight rewrites your future. But there is something quietly powerful about pausing long enough to actually notice your own life, instead of simply moving through it. Sometimes that's where real change actually begins, not with the moon, with attention. Here's something worth sitting with. History repeats in patterns, slow orbits, familiar names, seasons returning again and again in an endless, predictable rhythm. The buck moon has risen every July for as long as human memory stretches back, and it will keep rising long after all of us are gone. Nature repeats too. Antlers fall, then regrow. Seasons end, then return. Nothing in the wild considers an ending permanent. It's simply preparation for the next beginning. But human life is different. We don't repeat in perfect cycles. We change. We grow unevenly, sometimes painfully, sometimes suddenly, and never quite the same way twice. That contrast, nature's steady repetition against the unpredictable arc of a human life, is where perspective quietly enters the picture. Because the last time the sky looked something like this, none of us existed yet. And the next time it happens again, none of us will be here to witness it either. Which means tonight isn't really about the rarity of the sky at all. It's about the rarity of being here to see it. So here we are. One ordinary buck moon, rising the same way it has for thousands of years, arriving inside a rare and slow-moving cosmic chapter that most of history never got to witness. The science is real. Pluto's position, the length of its orbit, the rarity of this planetary moment, all of that is measurable and true. The symbolism, the meaning many people find in it, is something else entirely. A personal lens, not a universal law. But maybe the most important truth tonight has nothing to do with planets at all. The moon does not change who you are. It never has. What it does, quietly, patiently, the same way it has for every generation before you, is give you a reason to pause, a reason to look up, a reason to notice how much you have changed since the last time a full moon caught your attention like this. History moves in cycles. Nature moves in cycles. But you are not required to wait for a rare alignment to decide who you become next. Every person still chooses what they do with the moment they are living in, right now, underneath this exact sky. So tonight, when the buck moon rises, don't ask what the universe is doing to you. Ask what you are finally ready to do for yourself. If you're planning to watch tonight's moonrise, tell me in the comments where you'll be standing when it does. And before you go, ask yourself one honest question. What version of you is this moon quietly asking you to release? If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next rare sky moment might arrive sooner than you think.